So I think first of all, I want to kind of quickly wish you all that I hope that everybody of you is safe and taking care of yourself, your family, and community. I think that's the most important part during what is happening right now overall across the globe. And this is a good time to spend time with yourself as well as with your family as well, because otherwise we are always hustling as founders of the startups, right? So you make sure that this is a time you are, even though there could be certain implications on what you're doing right now, but this is also a time to spend with yourself and with your family as well at the same point of time, because otherwise we don't get to do that most of the time, right? Now coming back to what is the role in terms of what are founders doing in this particular situation, right? So now there are different types of founders, as we all know, right? So founders who are wannabe founders, that who are kind of ideating and trying to look out and start something. So they're like wannabe entrepreneurs. Founders have just started maybe 3 months back or 4 months back or 5 months back, right? So that's another category of founders. Founders who have started, who have MVPs, maybe does not have a product market fit. They're looking out for the product market fit and so on across their service and products. And there are founders who are who have raised angel funds and so on. And there are founders who have raised Series A, Series B funds, right? Now, the founders who have raised Series A, Series B funds, they are largely unaffected from a cash flow and a runaway standpoint, and hence they are quite okay in at least handling from their cash flow and burn rate standpoint, because investors are not pushing them to grow right now. Uh, the other categories of founders, and the founders who are wannabe entrepreneurs and founders who've just started a month back and so on, they might be slightly less affected. But the founders who've been doing this from 6 months, 12 months, figuring out their product market fit, figuring out their investment raise and all. So that's where the critical part and the critical mass is there, who are largely affected with the situation right now. Most of the founders, what they're now doing in those categories and the other categories as well to an extent, is trying to see, first of all, how do we survive. Because I think partners are running away right now, potential customers are running away right now. The consumer purchases and transactions are not happening much, except certain online transactions where they have to buy their basic essential needs and so on, right? But otherwise, largely on any other service and a product, the transactions are on hold by a lot of consumers as well. And similarly, a lot of potential customers as well, based on whether you're in B2B or B2C. So the first thing the founder's role is to, other than making sure you're spending time with yourself and family, the next thing is to figure out what's your runaway. I think that's the most critical part. Founders are first figuring out what's your cash flow, how much money do you have, and whether you can sustain next 6 to 12 months. So they are assessing the situation, whether this is a 3 months, whether 6 months, or 12 months, and 18 months. Now, a lot of strategic people are saying you have to have a plan for 18 months. Some people are saying it could be around 12 months, and some people are saying around 6 months. So I think there's no clear answer, but I think my personal opinion is around 6 to 12 months, largely because it will be by mid of this year, the situation will be slightly flattened out, is what has been predicted across the ecosystem. Once it is flattened out, it will take another 4 to 5 months for everybody to recover out of it, and maybe even 6 months. And then after those 6 months, people will start transacting normally the way it was happening before this has happened, right? So that's an around, for surely 8 to 12 months of a window before things come into very normal the way it was. That's sort of a gut feel right now, based on how certain countries are behaving, where certain countries are peaking out, and so on. So the founders are figuring out now, whether do I have 6 months runaway, I have 12 months runaway, when I have 18 months runaway. And obviously, there's 2 or 3 categories of founders who have not raised money and so on. They're largely affected. So they are figuring out, how do I sustain, or how do I survive, actually, not even sustain. How do I survive in midst of the situation, and how do I plan out my runaway now? So that's one of the role founder has to play, a very critical role. Then the second step is the founders are now looking out to do that. What do I need to start doing? whether I have to reduce my team. If it's a 5 people team, should I do it now 3 people team or 2 people team? Or whether you have those 5 people so committed to you that they can stay with you for next 8 to 12 months, even if you don't give them salaries and so on. So founders are having, and one of the role of the founders is to communicate with their team members, which could be the founding team or could be an additional team on top of it, for working with you, and communicate and have a dialogue with them that what does this mean for your company, what does this mean for you as a founder or your co-founders, and then what does it mean for those team members. So that's one of the role, you have to effectively communicate with those people. If you have an early customer, so that's another communication and a role of a founder is you have to personally go and communicate with your customers at the same point of time and give them that whatever confirmation and validation that you exist, you continue to exist. If you think that you will continue to exist, and whatever support is required, you'll continue doing that. Using different remote channels. So that's very important. Other part where you have to communicate with your potential customers as well as your existing customers. The third part is now whether do you stop. One of the role of the founders is whether do you stop marketing, whether you stop asking for your prospects. So yes, a lot of people are now cutting down on the marketing. So for example, companies like Airbnb, who has $1 billion annual marketing budget, so they've completely halted their marketing activities. So it's maybe prudent right now because a lot of you wouldn't get that ROI from your marketing activities anyway. So you could cut down that unless it's very organic. That's fine. Just that people know that you continue existing and you continue doing work and good work what you're doing in your company. But anything from a lead generation and that sort of things, I think that's going to take sort of a backseat right now. So you have to see how do you want to do your marketing. If you have an inorganic marketing strategy, I think you should hold that to an extent and then focus on some of the organic marketing. The other part is on the sales side. What do you do with your sales? A lot of companies and founders have given the break to the sales guys because obviously nobody is buying right now, especially in B2B category and so on, right? So the other role is to how do you then utilize this people who are getting freed up in this house. So for example, if you have 10-member team, out of that maybe one of them is marketing, maybe one of them is sales, one of them is customer support, or two of them are customer success and so on. So what you have to do is you have to see now how do you distribute different work between all of them, and maybe even give additional responsibilities, maybe something different. So marketing guy can maybe do customer support, a sales guy can do maybe an upsell to an existing customer, keep them engaged and so on, right? So one of the role of founder is now how do you smartly keep some of these guys also involved by offloading some other work to them as well. The other thing is communicating with the investor. So for example, let's say 3 months before you were communicating with, let's say, seed investor or an angel investor and so on. So you have to keep communicating on that. What you're doing, what's your plan to survive, what do you plan to do in next 6 months, 8 months, what is your strategy, what you're changing, what you're not changing. So that's another important role of a founder. You need to continue doing that instead of completely halting it. And in fact, some of the investors will be happy to look at it and understand that how are you behaving, because this also proves the capability of the founder of running companies in critical times like this. So continue to do that as well as an important role for that particular founders. And I think at the same point of time, as the founder of the company, your role is also to help your community at the same point of time, right? So I think one is obviously your family, one is your employees, and the other is how do you help your community also at the same point of time. There are a lot of pressures on you, understandable, but in such sort of situation, one of the roles of founders is to see how do you help your community in different ways. For example, the community could be your social community, where do you stay? Your community could be your startup community and founders and so on. So you need to see how do you help out different people, different founders in different ways, and maybe cross collaborate with your team so that everyone survives, and then you have good relationships built up with those founders as well. So I think these are some of the important roles and activities a founder should undertake to make sure that you guys can survive. Now, obviously, please remember, this is Minimum 6 months, could go 12 months as well. But I think the whole business recovery will start happening 6 months thereafter only. So one of your role is now to see how do I survive first, as I mentioned, which is like for next 4 to 5 months or even 6 months. Then how do you sustain after that for next 6 months, right? And then you start looking at your growth strategies again. So that's how you have to distribute yourself in those three buckets. How do you survive? How do you sustain? And then how do you grow? And that's how you should spend a lot of your time in managing and planning all those activities. One of the important other thing, of the founder is that if you were looking to sort of pivoting, right? So, for example, if your product market fit was not right, you were looking for some adjacent markets to look out what else I can do. This is a perfect time to actually think about it, just not for the sake of it, but if you think that your previous and past experiences have not given you the right success and the right fit, then it's a right time to even think about pivoting also at the same point of time, but pivoting in your adjacent field so that you can have better product market fit and so on. So it's another important role as a founder. You should spend time on that. And at the same point of time, whatever backlogs you guys might have, because customers are cold, ecosystem is cold, investors are cold. So you have to see if you have any sort of backlogs in terms of financial activities, backlogs in terms of your product, backlogs in terms of your operation services, and so on. Just get that completed. This is a very good time to clear up all the sort of backlogs, not only product backlogs, but any other operational backlogs also, to get that cleared. So these are some of the important things what a founder should do in this particular situation. And then I can take up more questions later, but let me come to now investors part as well. So I think investors role is still much simpler. Now, obviously, again, there are two sort of investors, as we all know, angel investors and then the venture capital investors. So I think angel investors role is primarily now looking at what are the newer opportunities. So that's sort of what angel investors are looking at it based on what has happened right now. How do things go more online? How do things go more remote? What are the newer opportunities in these scenarios? And so on. So those are certain things what angel investors are thinking. Venture capital investors, just so that every one of you know, is looking only to invest or largely invest into their current portfolio companies. They are constantly on calls with their portfolio company founders. They are constantly making sure that all of the things what I mentioned for the founders are getting taken care by their founders as well. They're working very hard on the cash flows and the run flows. They've already informed that this is not the growth time, but this is again a survival and a sustaining time. So make sure that your plans are changed accordingly to that or adopted to that. This is now, and they're not asking to grow at any cost right now. At the same point of time because of what is happening right now. So investors' role is largely to make sure that on one side they're talking to all their portfolio founding companies, which they're doing. On the other side, they're talking to their own investors as well to kind of tell them how their portfolio companies are doing, what is happening, how are they making sure that they have more money to invest if required in next 5 to 6 months and so on. So that sort of communication happening with their investors also, and that's how they're making sure that their companies exist and continue to exist after some time as well. So investors' role is still less complicated. I'm not saying it's easy. It's still hard, but it's at least slightly less complicated than what founders' role is in current ecosystem. Investors will look out for newer opportunities moving forward. As I said, a few of the things like telehealth, a lot of online transactions in terms of a lot of other services can come out, a lot of remote working in terms of B2B. How do you make sure that you can manage remote teams much better across different departments and so on? And a lot of areas in that sort of segment will start coming out. Some of the segments like online education or fintech that continue to anyway grow, and that continue to be one of the areas of interest moving forward anyways, because that's something which will not get hampered so much, and will continue to have a lot of traction in the near future also. But that's how investors are looking for newer opportunities at the same point of time. So I think that's largely on what founders' role is and what investors' role is in current situation, and how do they react and how do they act. And obviously, you have to act fast. You cannot be slow. If you think that you cannot survive, it's better. Maybe you want to rethink about it. And if you think you can survive, continue, but make sure that you're taking care of all of those steps. One of the important point for founders again is whether the employee salaries I can pay, whether I have to cut down, whether I cut down whole team or half of the team, or I cut down the salaries. I think that's more of dialogue with your employees, figuring out who are essentials or not essentials, and then taking those appropriate decisions. Please try hard as much as possible to avoid any drastic decisions unless it is completely unavoidable. I think everyone understands that, but if you can avoid as much as possible, if you can retain them for more time, because anyways they're not gonna find jobs so easily outside as well. One of the other important role is how do you open up your stock options to your employees as well at the same point of time, because they will be helping you for lesser salaries or even for no salaries. So how do you open up your cash, sort of stock options pool also for them more and more. So think about all of those things from a founder perspective, and so on, right? Yeah. Yogesh? Yogesh, do you have the next question now? Yogesh, you are mute. Okay, I think we lost him. So maybe I'll take up a question. This is a question from Rishi. Uh, are all the virtual events these days are conferences, webinars? Do you see any potential virtual trade shows? Yeah, I think so. Virtual trade shows, virtual events, we will become sort of focus areas for sure. Yes, because I think this whole socializing will have a different meaning after everything gets flattened out. And how does the social gatherings happen in terms of trade shows, events, B2B, and so on will change drastically. There is a potential for anything virtual or remote. And trade shows, events is one of the classic category. In fact, this has opened up an opportunity for VR also, which was not taking up, earlier. But I think now with all what has happened, these virtual trade shows and virtual events on VR, AR is starting picking up, and a lot of companies are trying to now provide solutions in that as well. So absolutely yes, there will be potential for virtual trade shows and anything virtual moving forward. Yogesh, are you back? I think we lost him. Okay, and any other questions, guys? There's one question from Abhijit. Can you please run us through a quick steps to deal with pivots in IT industry? Good question. So I think, as I said, pivot does not have to be for the sake of it. So for example, let's say if you have a product or a service in a certain market, and you've been trying very hard to kind of get your product or service adopted by your potential customers, but you're having very hard time, which means is that fit is not really happening, and you're now thinking whether this is the right strategy, right product, right service, and so on. So you have to now see first. The first important thing is you don't have to pivot completely 180-degree kind of a tangent, right? So you have to first see that what is my adjacent market to it. So one of the startup was actually in a fintech industry, was providing their software to a bank or customers like banks. However, the pricing or the price point they were trying to sell was not really happening. So they use that same ecosystem and started providing new product offering on top of it, which helped them to sort of get more upsell, which means is they have not pivoted per se. However, they had one more product line as an additional offering on top of it to make it more attractive and to have better pricing and demand better pricing from their customers. So look out at those sort of pivots first, and that's how typically a startup and a founder will look out, as much as possible. However, if the market what you're in does not have that long-term large market size view, then it would make sense to look out at a completely different thing, because most of the times things are driven if the market is large enough or not. But if the market itself is not large enough, then you can also even think about pivoting into a different segment wherein you think that you can utilize some of your baseline components of what you build, you can reutilize it for some other vertical or other horizontal as well. So think about those lines first. Look out in your existing ecosystem, existing market. What's an adjacent thing you want to do? What's an adjacent thing you want to add? You want to cut down? You want to change? So that sort of first pivot. If not, the second sort of pivot is where you can utilize some of your existing product and service, but do it for a different industry or a different segment by doing some tweaks around it or by doing some changes around it. So look out those pivots from that perspective. The other question I have is, by 8-12 months runaway, you mean transaction will start by early next year? Yeah, I think that's sort of what early next year, 2021, that sort of is what a lot of people in the industry are envisioning, wherein the actual purchases, the actual transactions, unless it's very essential need, will start happening during that point of time and start recovering that point of time. For example, now transactions on essential needs, even in, let's say, B2B, for example, right now, a lot of customers are buying a lot of remote tools. People are going and taking Zoom subscriptions. People are going and taking Microsoft Teams subscription, Slack subscription, a lot of other remote project management tools, and so on, right? So there, the transactions already happening because that has now become an essential, day-to-day essential for running your business and operations. So transactions are happening on those. But if that is not in that category, then yes, a lot of transactions, purchases, whether it's B2C, B2B, will start happening unless it is essential, right? So will start happening largely late this year, early next year is what the thought process is right now across the industry. The other question is, what new business opportunities do you think can come from market once the market situation improves? As I said, some of the opportunities like telehealth, a lot of people are looking at that as one of the industry. Life sciences and healthcare overall, that's another potential opportunities what people will be looking at it now. Third is all these remote working tools for B2B, startups, SMBs, even enterprises. That is something what as a new opportunity will come up. I think fintech will continue, and there might be some newer ways of engaging where banks will start buying now a lot of sort of softwares and products and tools like this, where they can manage their customers and engage their customers remotely in a much better way as opposed to just doing a video call, right? So a lot of banks have launched it, but is that really engaging? Is that really taken up? No, there will be no, maybe new innovations in that. So those are other opportunities wherein a lot of newer opportunities will start coming. So these are three: life sciences, healthcare, telehealth, this remote working and remote experience and remote customer consumer engagement are some of the newer opportunities people will start looking at. And innovations in existing online education and online sort of finance and financial service like fintech, will be newer set of opportunities again. The next question I have is, what do you see future of IT services and software development companies? Good question. I think at least large IT industry has said that this year it will have zero growth or maybe even negative growth, which means they'll remain flattened this year, at least calendar year 2020 is what larger industries are saying, and that might be true for a lot of other smaller IT companies as well. But what's the future of IT services? In different ways. Now, future of IT services in terms of their own operations, that will be dramatically maybe different. They will start adopting these newer ways of working with their employees, which has been traditionally working out of the offices and so on. But now, a lot of their HRs, a lot of their operations heads will start looking at what are different ways of working and still engage employees in different ways. In terms of their customers, they'll keep on engaging with the customers, they'll keep on helping the customers. They might defer certain payments, and so on. So I think, but having customer engaged will be key for IT services. But is IT services going to go out and so on? No, not really. So I think that will continue. It's just a matter of time. And in fact, what will happen is, because of this economic slowdown, a lot of customers, potential customers, who are cutting off jobs, reducing team sizes, they will start looking out outsourcing. It's my personal belief in 2021 more and more. So I think, for IT services, the future is still intact, and maybe even better for next year at least. Wherein some of the negative or zero growth this year will be kind of accommodated next year. The next question is, does outsourcing work from US, Europe will be increased in India? I think this is similar. I think it will increase, I think, at least for next year for sure. This other question is, we have developed a proprietary virtual trade expo platform. It's been under for 8 months. We're testing next week if you get spare time. Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to me personally and I can definitely have a look at it. Do share economy startup, share rights, co-living, get more boost. So I think this whole sharing economy, I mean, there's a different view now, because the whole sharing economy was, how do you share things, right? For example, how do you stay together in co-living? How do you share your rights, as an example? So I think if there is more and more social physical connect, I think it will have an impact. They will have maybe a hard time to recover and so on. But otherwise, from this whole sharing economy, which is in different other areas. So for example, you are trying to buy from your social friend circle and so on. So I think that will increase more and more. So some areas will get boost, some areas may not get boost. So it depends upon what is your actual offering in that sharing economy space. Yeah, I think so. I've covered a lot of questions which is been put up in the Q&A panel here, but if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer you guys. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions if you have anything. Or Yogesh, if you have any questions, you can also ask and I can.
Yeah, just one request. Just tell before asking question, best just tell your name to Akash and start with your questions.
Hi Akash, this is Midun here.
Hi, Milan.
So as an early startup, we started a company in 4 months back. It's a food startup. So we are working on some other software things, software company also we are having on our freelancing company also we are having it. So for the food startup company, we have an outlet in Pune,
Okay.
and one outlet we are planning to open in this May. Actually, we are working on that food startup. Actually, we plan to open one more outlet, but now we are working with the some facing some difficulties on the employee salary and what we do for the next 2-3 months. So how to handle that situation, because like we already this March month completely there is no we completely shut down our outlet.
Yeah.
So but we provide the full salary for our employees actually. So but after the next 2 months, or like as the situation is going on, as we selling the fast food and the cold products, so yeah, this environment, this cold products is not that much going frequently. The sale is also less. So as our product, so what we'll do for handling the employees and the environment, so how do we cope up with that? So this is my question.
Yes, so I think the first thing is, see if you can do different innovative things to do your business. For example, if you have a physical outlet, can you do deliveries and still make some money so that you have some cash flow coming in? And that's a model what a lot of outlets are adopting today. That's one thing. Second thing is you communicate with your employees that this is what is happening. You give them pre-hand that how much you'll pay and for how much time you'll pay, so they can start managing their own cash flow. And third, you can make sure that you mention them as a dialogue, as I mentioned, that you're constantly communicating. You're helping them as well. You're helping them, their family, may not be monetarily, but maybe in different other ways. So keep doing that, so that the relationship with that employee is maintained, and they continue with you for a longer period of time, as much as possible.
Yeah, we are trying our best to helping them, but some of the employees are not agreeing what we are they expecting more actually. But without
Correct.
work, how
Correct.
we
So
can like deal with those peoples? Like the some of the employees are coming with like this is a rule, you have to pay the whole salary for the employees, but our cash flow is not that much. We can pay for
yeah,
like 3 months. It's not efficient for us. For
yeah.
the not that much which we have a cash flow. So we telling them like so we paying the 50% of the salary for sure. But after this sometime if we lockdown is open we can pay more also, but people are like some people are adamant they are not
Yes, yes.
standing.
So yeah, you will have certain category of employees who will not accept that. But I think then you could do only what you could do, right? So there is no magic here. So if they're willing to move out, irrespective of everything you could do in your hands, you have done. I think then that's in the best interest of them and you that they move out if that's what they feel like. But having said that, your job as a founder is to make sure that you're doing everything right for them. End of the day, the decision would be theirs. How much they want to continue and how much they don't want to continue with you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi Akash, Yogesh here.
Yeah, hi, Yogesh.
Everyone knows the Airbnb story. When the time was tough, when the economy slowed down during 2009, the founders of Airbnb started selling chips packets. They given some fancy name during the election time in the US, and they started selling the chips packet just to because for a survival purpose, just to have a certain cash in hand so that they can clear their debt. And everyone knows that they just got sold so many of chips packet, got some cash and clear their debt. Later they raise so much of money from Y Combinator and other VCs, and yeah, the rest is history. So as a founder, I'm also thinking how can I bring a cash flow, or what are the cash I can generate, what are the revenue I can generate for my company as a founder. But I'm still unable to get a thought because I'm just completely locked in house. So that's one of the issue. But after the things get normalized, do founder need to think apart from working from their startup, they also need to focus somewhere else where the revenue can be help. At least they can generate a revenue so that the run rate maybe get extended, or they just
Yes.
need to or they just need to focus their own startup because own startup there is a question mark how much revenue own startup can generate during this slowdown.
No, absolutely, Yogesh. So as I mentioned, one of the roles of the founders is to make sure that how you are gonna make sure that you have runaway and the cash flow coming up, right? So when you start saying how, then you'll automatically figure out that, and when you work on that, you'll figure out that what is your existing thing will give you, and what are other things which can help you get more. So for example, I said like physical outlets, right? So they're trying to do now delivery so that some of the cash flows start coming up, even if they're not doing it so actively earlier, right? As an example. So I think every founder's role is to figure out what else can give me. I mean, I don't have a right answer for everybody right now, but you have to start asking that question: that how do I survive for next 6 months, and then how do I sustain for 6 months after that, and then how do you grow? So when you do that and be hard to yourself, start asking hard questions to yourself, involve your co-founders, maybe involve your teams for the ideas if required, and then try to do which is feasible. I mean, you may have some moonshot ideas, but then it may not be so suitable to do that right now to have cash flow, because that's your own thought. So figure out what some other companies are doing, and then see what else you can do to get some more cash flow. But I think that's a question you'll have to answer on your own as a founder. But if you are asking right questions to yourself, how do I survive and sustain, which I mentioned in the beginning, you might find some answers to it, which may be practical in nature. And to be really honest, you might not find any answers to it, which is where you'll have to start thinking about whether you want to pivot, whether you want to take a break, you want to halt for 6 months, and so on, right? So that those are some of the answers which will come up also at the same point of time.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Thanks. Thanks, Akash.
This other question I've just got. We are from gaming industry. We started a few weeks back. We share various gameplays and stream. Okay, if you can guide us, what will be trends in it? See, I think one of the trend has been seen is that the mobile advertisement or the gaming advertisement or in-app advertisements for games have gone up because the time spent on games have gone really high. So I think for gaming companies, it's a good opportunities. I've seen a lot of games which were not popular are suddenly becoming popular. So figure out what's the behavior. How do you keep people engaged? How do you keep there's a lot of this stories wherein people are not able to cope up with each other even within the families. So how do you make sure that you bring out some games, you have their fitness levels right, you have their entertainment levels right, you have their collaboration levels right, you keep them upskilling in different ways, and then how do you have gaming involved in every stage of that? I think those are newer opportunities you can start looking out in the gaming market if you are in that. I think it's a very good time for gaming companies to look out and innovate in some of those other areas also, as opposed to just pure play entertainment games. But if it can affect your lifestyle as well, and if you have games around that, I think that's my personal thought process that that will help get adoption of your games at the same point of time during this lockdown. So these are some of the trends what I'm seeing from a gaming standpoint. There was one more question. Yeah. Do you think it's a good time to start new venture for 16 or start exploring opportunities to join? Okay, the question is it good time to start a venture for next 6-12 months? I think, to be honest, not really. I mean, if you are into it and you just verge on starting something, then yes. But if you can take some time and push it forward by 3 to 6 months, assess what happens in 3 months and then start, that's an ideal thing. Having said that, people always go back and say there was 2008, 2009, there are a lot of new companies come up. Yes, so if you can survive, if you start and if you think that you can survive for next 12 months with whatever great ideas you might have, and if you have that conviction and passion, then you should. It's a good time to look out for new opportunities, do something. But if you think you cannot survive, you obviously getting money will be very difficult right now. So if you think you have all the money, or you think you have the right set of 3-4 people and your co-founder to start something, and you think all of those 4 or 5 people can survive for next 6 to 12 months, and you have certain great ideas around some of the trends what we just discussed, or some other trends you think is right or could be right, then yeah, I mean, it could be other way around. It could be a good time for to start up. But if you don't have that conviction, passion, and ability to survive for next 6 to 12 months, then it is more practical in nature to defer that actual execution of your startup. You can still keep on exploring and discussing and doing something, but um, uh, but you'll have to take into some of these points into account if you want to start doing something new. There was one, real estate is already down, and how people might lose their jobs and get defaulted. Yeah, I think real estate, travel, hospitality are some of the industries which will be affected a lot. How to deal with it? I think there's no straight answer to it. You just have to make sure that you might have to cut down few things, you might have to delay certain projects, and so on. So I think that's a regular, or you start thinking innovative ways on how do you again manage your cash flow accordingly. But yes, real estate is going to affect it, and as I said, a lot of purchases will get delayed and deferred. Bookings may get deferred as well. Any commitments on booking and further payments will get delayed now. So there will be a lot of impact. I think real estate will have to start thinking very hard that how do you do that, but at the same point of time, how do you survive? I think all of those other points also are applicable to them. Other question from Siddharth is, what are the two most important messages to communicate with your clients over next 2 to 3 months? I think one of the most important one is to say, hey, we exist and we are there for you. So I think that's a very important communication with your client and a customer you have to do. That, hey guys, we understand what is happening. We know you may get impacted, but we exist and we're happy to help, and we will provide all sort of support in these times as well for our own product and service. Now, if you think you can do some additional help to your existing customers, feel free to do that, and it's a very good time to build that relationship with them so they'll stay longer with you. So you can also ask if they need any adjacent help which you or your community can help them. So keep that dialogue of your support on your existing product and service, and the dialogue on their additional needs which you can help via your network, whether your community, whether your partners and so on. You can help them, and this has to be direct, not social. This has to be direct communication. You have to schedule a call, you have to send an email out, and make sure that you guys are talking to the customers directly, even if they have paused and so on, as Siddhartha has asked. So I think that's one of the most critical thing you have to do with your customer. The other thing is, the second thing, the key message is, you have to also let them your survival plans and so on. You have to be very honest with your customer, that how will you support, what's your plan to support, and then if you are changing your whatever, if you're not going to survive, if you're not going to sustain and so on, you have to give them that message as well, as much as possible once you are sure about it. So I think make sure that in good or bad way, you're making sure you're communicating with the customer, and using these two messages very clearly with your customers and articulating it very simple and very easier, and so that your relationship is intact, or it will intact for your future opportunities with the same customer.
Akash, there is a question from Akhil Dikshit that do you think current situation is way worse than the global financial crisis of 2008-9? Hello.
Hi, Yogesh. Sorry, I think I got disconnected in between. I'm back now.
Okay. That's what I thought. Like, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry for that.
Yeah. So, there is one question from Akhil Dikshit that do you think current situation is worse than the global financial crisis of 2008-9?
So yeah, I think the UN and IMF have already said that this is worse than 2008, 2009. So I think they are the experts, much better than me. So I would go with their analysis and what they have mentioned. So yeah, I think, but it looks like all the industry stalwarts have, including the UN and IMF, have said that this is going to be worse than 2008, 2009, right? So I think look at it, and why would that be? If you want to step back and kind of see why is that, and why it is more worse. So 2008, 2009, there was no healthcare pandemic, right? It was purely economical sort of a downturn. Uh, However, this one is a healthcare pandemic, and then because of the healthcare pandemic, there is an economic downturn. So it's a combination of both, as opposed to just purely economic downturn per se, wherein maybe the purchasing parity has gone down, and hence the production has gone down, and hence that's a cycle of economics wherein things have started getting affected, and hence it's a recession and a downturn. But however, in this case, the trigger was not sort of a purchase parity. This trigger was a healthcare pandemic, and that so this healthcare pandemic which is going on, which you have to fight and survive, and then because of it, there is this whole economic downturn which has affected purchases and hence productions and hence job loss and hence lesser spending and so on, right? So it's a deadly combination actually, and with that deadly combination, it has to be worse than 2008, 2009, and it looks like UN and IMF, as I said, has already mentioned that. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Akash, there are quite a few other questions are coming in. Can you just go through the questions?
Let me see. Okay, just give me a sec. In Yogesh, can you help me read out some of the questions, because I've dialed in from my phone now, and
No problem. The question is from Ashish. Ashish is asking to you any possibilities for new financial crisis, as cascading COVID-19 crisis, and so recovery will take later next year, 2021.
Yeah, so I think this is similar to the previous question. Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
it is
yes.
a crisis as well. So it will take and different industries will take their own time. Some industries will recover early 2021. Some industries will recover late 2021. Some industries may even recover in early 2022. So I think travel, hospitality is something where people are saying the industries will recover properly only late 2021. So
Yes, yes. The next question is from Mahesh. In your opinion, what are the new opportunities you see in next 6 to 12 months? That's, I think, you already answered.
yeah, I think that I've already answered. Correct. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Guys, any more question for Akash? The question is from Mithun. Midun, what do you think about marketing industry upcoming months? What do you think about marketing industry?
Yes, so I think the whole marketing advertising industry is already down. They are going through downturn for sure. So they will have, and they will have at least slightly larger impact, because for other companies to start marketing and recovering and then starting marketing will take its own time. So there is a high enough impact on the marketing industry right now, and you will see a lot of downturn in that segment for a long time from now.
Hi, you can ask directly question to Akash. Just unmute yourself. The question.
Akash, hi, this is Siddharth.
Yeah, Siddharth.
So Akash, I was wondering, what are some of your thoughts on how this entire pandemic is going to change the way that we work? I know that obviously there's going to be a lot more focus on remote teams, but beyond that, what changes do you see behaviorally happening between the employers and the employees?
So yes, I think employers, as I said, will obviously start thinking about employee engagement in a new online world, right? So I think A lot of times the employee engagement was based on direct communications when employees used to come in office. So employers will start thinking about how do you engage in newer ways, which may not have a direct contact with the employees the way we used to have it. So I think employee engagement is one of the important category a lot of employers will start thinking about. Secondly, employers, I think, will start caring more for a lot of employees' productivity and a lot of other scenarios like healthcare and so on. So that's another behavioral impact will happen on the employer's part, other than the engaging part. That how do you make sure that you take care of your employee in different other ways, which were not so important in earlier scenario. From an employee standpoint, they will start looking out that which employers are more open in such newer ways of working. So I think employees will start preferring those companies. And anyways, as we have seen, there was an upward sort of a trend from employees where they were picking up companies who were more open in working in such sort of scenarios wherein companies allowing them to work from home slightly more time, more flexible, hours of coming into office, and so on, right? So, and then lot of behavioral impact on how do employees behave between themselves. That's going to have huge impact as well. Wherein if you're not meeting somebody for a week, then what are different aspects of communication and collaboration you should take care? What are different etiquettes you have to follow? And then what are different ways of modeling on doing those sort of collaborations? So I think that will have a large, and I believe that that's the largest behavioral impact people will start having now while working with their peers, in the same company. So I think those are three or four top of my mind thing which is coming right now. But I think that's where largely how do you engage more, how do you take care of your employees more, and then how do you behave and how do you collaborate with your peers. I think those three will be important categories at a top level, and then you'll start having a lot of different means and channels and tools and options to take care of all of those things to have the right outcome. And obviously, how do you make sure that all your employees are participating in all of those things? I think that will be one of the more critical part. As people opt out or opt in to work remotely more and more possible, more and more in near future.
Akash, next question is: do you think economic slowdown removes the unnecessary competition, or what are the bubble we say? Uh, those economic slowdown removes the bubble and the unnecessary competition from the market.
Whether it will remove a bubble, maybe yes. Now, companies who have been growing at the cost of unit economics, uh, they will have a hard time. I think there was already in 2019, the theme was starting building up that you cannot grow at all cost unless your economics are right. So I think that theme will become more and more important now. And people who are in the bubble, who are having lots of losses, and no having clear direction, no having not having clear strategy of becoming profitable, and so on. And they continue to live in that bubble, and whoever is supporting that bubble will will have a hard time moving forward. So yes, there is opportunity for a lot of corrections, and I'm sure a lot of companies will correct themselves in that scenario. Second question: will it eradicate competition? Um, to be an extent, yes. I mean, imagine this: if you're a disruptor of a certain industry, and that industry traditionally has been driven by a lot of debts, a lot of cost involved. So in those scenarios, even for early disruptors, you will have your traditional competition also having hard time, and you will get more chance and opportunity to grow further. And then respectively, as people who are sound and have right economics and have right strategy direction will continue, and the competition, if not having those right economics, not having clear strategy for profitability and so on, will start getting closing down. And in fact, in A lot of countries, a lot of such companies are already shutting down. If you know the company which was OneWeb, heavily funded by SoftBank, close to 3 billion plus sort of investments in total across all the investors. They filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks back, right? So just like that. So yes, a lot of competition will go away in those scenarios. Who does not have those right models and economics in place.
So Akash, I have a follow-up question as well, if nobody else does.
Yes, Siddharth, go ahead.
So Akash, I'm sure you've been working with remote teams for a long time now. I think two of the most biggest challenges that founders or leaders have is one is gaining the trust of the teams because they don't meet them as frequently, and two is holding them accountable. So do you have any suggestions or do you have any tips on how leaders and founders can get better at doing that?
Yeah, so personally, I advise that you guys should have daily connects with your teams. Just that you all are connected, and those daily connects is like a stand-up wherein it may not be necessarily purely work related, but it can also be just communicating and figuring out everybody is good. Any issues you can help out, and then any other blockers from your working standpoint you can help, and any things related to that. So it could be a combination of both. I think that's very essential, and a lot of companies are doing that to make sure that you're communicating, you're collaborating, you're connected. There is a personal connect as well to it, and there's a trust level which is maintained. If you are a founder, small teams, go ahead and also start doing one-on-one calls. Just give them informal calls, maybe within a week or maybe every 2 days. Be in constant collaborating with them and kind of making sure that you're there for them. I think those are certain things I've seen is really working out, and those are some things what smaller and bigger companies have started adopting to make sure the all hands frequency have increased a lot now. Earlier, all hands used to happen in 3 months or maybe a month. Now all hands are happening every week, so that all the employees are coming together at the same point of time, and so on. So I think those are few things you have to make sure that you're doing constantly in this time, so that that level of trust and that level of collaboration is intact, and the productivity is still higher. Now, obviously, there was a stat earlier as well that remote working increased productivity by almost 30+%, right? So that still continues. I think the productivity working remotely is still very high, and that continues to be very high. You just have to make sure that you're following some of these practices so that that productivity is maintained per se.
Great, thank you.
All right, so maybe Yogesh, it's I think 12. We have passed our time.
Yes. Anyone has a last question to ask? Anyone guys? Anyone has last question? Just unmute yourself and ask if you have.
Hi Akash.
Okay, this is the last question. Last question
Yeah,
Akash will take,
this is
and
the
then
last question, and
yeah.
this is follow up to a previous discussion only. So we understood that productivity, accountability, and everything for a remote team and leader versus the worker. How in this scenario, how we can ascertain about integrity or the confidentiality of what we are working, because most of us right now in like early stages we are trying some research and development work and like that, and with remote work, how do you ensure the integrity of our IPs?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, Mahesh. So now, see, I think for smaller teams and smaller startups, I'm sure by this time you already have that trust level with your employees, and anyways, a lot of such startups were doing practices of remote working and the work from home, right? So I think that needs to continue, and that trust needs to continue. And I'm sure as long as there was a trust established already, employees will also make sure that they keep their integrity intact in doing that. So I don't see a lot of disruption for those sort of companies who are already following practices of work from home, remote working, flexible hours. and so on. So I don't see any change in that. For bigger companies, sometimes it can be an issue, but I think bigger companies have a lot of their processes in place, a lot of systems and checks in place, a lot of audits in place to make sure that they can get an alarm or an alert if there are cases happening like that. So I think those are two ways smaller companies and bigger ways are handling that situation. But at the same part of time, in this critical time, I have seen that all sort of companies of whatever size and whatever nature are showing a lot of trust, and vice versa as well, wherein the employees have also shown a lot of trust and integrity to maintain the integrity of what they're doing. Because this is just not, like, I mean, unless a person has just joined. So if the person has just joined, then your onboarding has to be so fine and strong enough that they're aware of all of those things. And obviously, I'm believing that you guys would have already have NDAs in place with your employees during their joining and appointments, which typically happens. If not, then you should have that as your process and practice for any onboarding and new hires to make sure that sort of those things. And you, during onboarding, you make them understand the critical nature of your R&D work, so that there is a relationship which gets established, and there's this commitment of integrity which comes very inherently during that point of time. If you have not done that, then communicate right now, and communicate in a way so that they don't feel bad, but they understand the importance and impact of it. So start communicating if you have not done this already.
So all will wrap up here. Thank you, Akash, so much for joining with us during this time. It was really a fruitful Sunday for everyone, I hope. And thank you. We need our community need your support time to time. And yes, just wishing you like a good time ahead during this quarantine.
All right. Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you, everyone. And stay safe. Be careful. And I hope you survive and sustain. If you need any other help, just feel free to reach me out personally as well. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, dear all. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Take care. Take care, everyone. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. See you guys. Yeah.